I'm going to start the Port Commission meeting for Tuesday, June 17th, 2025. I will begin by closing the executive session and opening the public meeting and do a roll call. Commissioner Briscoe, are you with us?
Yes. Yeah.
Commissioner Shepard?
Here.
Commissioner Bell is also here. And then we have advisory committee meetings to announce this week. Bellingham International Airport Advisory Committee meeting will be June 26th at 4 p.m. It is a Zoom meeting. And you can go to our website and find that Zoom link. If you want to go in person, it's at the Aircraft Rescue Firefighting, our ARF station, 2005 West Bakerview Road in Bellingham. So that's in person and on Zoom for our BIAC meeting. Our Marine Advisory Committee is in person only. September 16th, you've got the summer off at 6 p.m. We'll announce this at our next meeting as well. And it's here in the Port Administration Office in the Harbor Center on Roeder Avenue. So that being that, we will go to public comment. Anybody wishing to speak for this commission can speak now on any subject you feel appropriate. We are asking that comments not be made as we go through public testimony, that you let people say their piece without comment. We like to make sure we respect everybody's opinion. With that, we allow about 3 minutes. We will have another public comment period at the end of our meeting, as is customary, but we'll start this meeting off with public comment, and I will start off with Ryan Bowman.
Sure, people. Aloha, commissioners, Bellingham community. My name is Ryan Bowman. I am here this evening, and I'd like to start off by thanking Mr. Robert Fix for his time and service and the lessons we learned with his time of service. My point of subject is to be prepared for what is to come in this transitional period, with that position in interim and looking for someone new, and our port being such an opportune situation to build something new. We can look back to the lessons learned not only from Robert Fix's tenure, but from our history here as a community. In the late 1800s, our resources and things were used to build the entire West Coast. Booming cities such as Seattle, San Francisco used our lumber, our bricks, our resources that were derived from here. We had ample ambition, and we built a giant city hall with the idea that we were going to reap the rewards of those resources and that work that was committed here. We did not see that. We maintained being a subdued city. We have plenty of pollution around from those industries that were building up other cities, and we reaped the suffering and the sacrifice of that. Those lessons would be nice to learn from as we move forward. And being that we are in an opportune situation with rebuilding and all of the multitude of environmental impact zones that we've been rebuilding and investing in to make our shorelines cleaner and more appropriate, we are ready to move forward. But in this situation, there are going to be plenty of people vying for this seat over here of leadership that might be lobbied for by other industrial organizations that seek to move backwards to that same opportunistic opportunity to profit themselves and not see that profit distributed through Whatcom County. I ask that we learn from those lessons while we move forward, so we can move forward with renewed excitement and do what we can to do something different. Maybe look at who we look at differently, different applicants, different application ideas, and things of that nature, so we don't recur the mistakes that we've made in the past. So I offer that as my analysis. I emailed all the commissioners today a specific subject matter, and that involves a specific federally funded opportunistic corporation that has history of being involved in decades of deceit and lies at the detriment of our environment. And they are ready and ample to take advantage of our port right now. And they have plenty of money to lobby that. There's other ones as well. So I seek maybe your time if you want to. I have plenty of ideas and thoughts on how we can move forward. And I would love to share those with any one of you at any time. So feel free to reach out to me when you have time. You are at my beck and call. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Dan?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Dan with the Whatcom Working Waterfront Coalition. I just wanted to send a friendly invite to everyone. Tomorrow evening, we are having our Blue Drinks Q2 meetup at Zeke's Pizza and Fountain Brewing at 5:30. This is an open public networking meeting for anyone interested in the waterfronts writ large to come and chat, meet other people that are connected with it, interested in it, work, play, recreate on it. So we hope to see you all there. Thanks.
Anyone else wishing to address the commission? Anyone online? Okay. Postscript.
Postscript clarification, that's the Zeke's and Fountain Brewing on Meridian. Thank you.
And Broadway. All right, I'm going to start new hire introductions by introducing, Steph, just give me a sec, introducing Tiffany DeSimone as our interim executive director, just introducing her to the world as we move into a new era. We will be going through a process to select a permanent, much to your point. We will describe that probably a little bit later, but I just wanted the world to see Tiffany today in a new light as our interim executive director and to welcome her warmly to the commission.
I have to figure out how to use the equipment up here, but I appreciate it. Thank you.
Stephanie, you're up with a new hire introduction.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Stephanie Wiley, Community Outreach Manager, here today to introduce the newest member of our team at the Marine Life Center, Asher Ballard, who is our new Marine Life Center representative. She spent 25 years as a nurse with being a naturalist and a volunteer at the Marine Life Center. She has decided to move into a different passion of hers, and we're really excited to have her as a part of our team.
Oh.
So
Thank you. Welcome,
Yes, thank you very much. Am I to say something?
if you'd like.
Remarks? I just want to say thanks very much. I've enjoyed volunteering here so much. I've been so impressed with the place, the people, really the people and what I see you guys do and how the community comes and how much they enjoy that and how much engagement. So I'm just thrilled to be able to be part of that, like for reals now. So thank you.
Welcome to the family. And then just so that I don't miss this opportunity, we are saying goodbye to Dave Warder. This is his final commission meeting. And after 32 years, you don't look a day over 20, we are finally saying goodbye to Dave Warder. And wish you well as you move onward. So thank you, Dave, for your time. All right, we'll move on to the consent agenda.
Motion to approve consent agenda items A through G.
Commissioner Shepard?
Yeah, I had a couple comments. I just wanted to make a comment on C and D. I recognize that C and D, with the acquisition of the Boxberry property and farm, and it is required a lot of partnership and a lot of creative thinking and planning with our team. And so I wanted to specifically just share my appreciation to our partners at the legislature for helping us get there with the funding, and our partners at the county who also brought in EDI grant and loan to make that possible. I was actually just out there strawberry picking with my kids this morning, and it is just such a premier property. It's a real treasure to have within kind of a public holding. And while I was there, I was eavesdropping on some other people's conversation. They knew about the acquisition happening. They were talking really positively about the future with the Berry Lab and research going to be happening on the site, and that operations would continue with the farm as well. And so people in the community know it's being talked about, and it really just is a premier property. So I'm looking forward to the possibilities that represents and our investment in local agriculture here in our community. So.
Unbeknownst to you, I asked that we pull that for a little further discussion in a little later part of the meeting, so we can do that now if you don't mind.
Sure, I'm happy to pull it.
I just felt that this was, C&D was too big of a, we are asking for a lot with this, and I wanted to explain why the port is doing it, how the funds are going to be repaid, and what the structure of this looks like. It's a lot of money, and we are indebting the port to a certain extent. We wanted to make sure the public knew exactly how that was going to get covered. So there were a couple of items in that I asked to be pulled.
Okay.
So Tyler, do you mind?
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Commission. Tyler Schroeder, Economic Development Director. As Commissioner Shepherd indicated, this is a really neat opportunity for port acquisition of the Boxberry Farm for the Whatcom Agriculture Research Station. The two items that are in front of Commission today on consent agenda are really the funding mechanisms. It's important to recognize the partnership. So one of the items is an interlocal agreement with Whatcom County for economic development investment grant and loan in the total of $2.89 million. As you break that down, the grant amount will be for $1.9 million, and the port is going for a 20-year loan in the amount of $933,000. The second item is through Washington State Department of Commerce. The legislature in 2023 awarded $741,000 in grant funds to help acquire this property. So in total, the property acquisition is close to $3.4 million, and on the port's books will be a $933,000 loan. So probably actually positive as it relates to the acquisition of the asset to the debt that we are taking on. As it takes to the next step, Annika in real estate, myself, and Tim in Holly's office have been working up the lease agreement. So the next component, and for the Commission's consideration on the July Commission meeting, will be a lease with the Whatcom Food and Farming Station. And remember that the location of the Berry Lab, the ability to continue to operate the agriculture and to continue to invest in economic development and innovative ways to provide value in processing and to our overall agricultural economy will become the responsibility of the Whatcom Food and Farming Station. Representatives of Berry, of dairy, of value add processing, of local agriculture are all on the board of the Whatcom Food and Farm Station. And a big part of the lease with that entity was to ensure that the lease amount per year is able to cover the costs for the port to acquire the property. So that'll cover the loan repayment, as well as some of the administrative annual work that we do just to administer the lease, to have a better understanding of the water rights that are also being acquired through the property. And so the lease amount will help cover those costs, as well as any future impacts to the port operations financially. There's language in the lease to be able to recognize that. So again, I think it shows the interest in the value of agriculture in our community and the idea of investing in economic development programs as the port is able to acquire this property with other funds, with those partnerships with the state and the county. Happy to answer any other questions that the commission may have.
No, that answered everything I had, but thank you. Commissioner Briscoe, did you want to weigh in?
That pretty well covers it. I'm glad we brought that up. So, thanks for pulling that and make plans for the people.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else on consent?
I wanted some clarification on E. That's the TVV Family Trust. If you could just refresh us on what that property is and what the trust covers.
Thank you, Commissioner. Terry Lahi, property manager for the port. That is the former Point Roberts Press building up in Blaine. The family trust is basically an individual, his family. That's the name that they acquired the building under. This is a rental renegotiation, a 5-year rental renegotiation, which is pretty standard in all our leases. So yeah, we've renegotiated the rents for the next 5 year with increases in there.
Okay. And what does the occupancy of the building look like right now?
I don't know off the top of my head. I know they have quite a bit of vacancies, and that has been a problem, historical problem in Blaine and that area.
Yeah. They continue to pay for the whole building, though,
Yes.
even with those vacancies, and
Yes.
I assume they actively market the property?
They're marketing the property. I mean, the biggest tenant is the Point Roberts Press in there, which was the original owner of the building.
Yeah. Okay. And am I correct, we own both the land and the building?
No, we just own the land. So
We just own the land. They actually own the building, so the lease covers the land lease then?
correct.
Okay. Okay. I think that was all my questions for that. Anybody else have any questions on E?
Not me.
All right.
Commissioner Briscoe, anything on the consent agenda you'd like to bring up?
Yeah, gee, I think there needs to be a little bit of explanation there. It's kind of blank, and maybe that could tell folks that just Terry could let us know that this kind of brings a closing to the termination of the lease over at the Shipyard site.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. This is a settlement agreement. This is a settlement agreement with our tenant, Fairhaven Industrial Marine Repair Facility. We've had some concerns with the tenant over the past years in the sense of payment of rent and a few other items. Their lease expires at the end of this month. This agreement brings them current with their rents, allows them to occupy the property through the end of the month. It also covers some of our legal fees, and then also allows them to occupy 2 buildings for about 2 weeks so that they can clear off the site. And then after that, I mean, the port will be whole going forward. We do have a cleanup project, so we do need that property back in our hands. And this would be a good way to end the lease, and it's a win for both parties.
So it's a
Thank you, Terry.
mutually agreed termination there, and our next steps include the process of completing the cleanup and then looking for a new tenant.
That is correct, sir.
Okay. All right.
Anything else, Commissioner Briscoe?
No, I think we pretty much covered all of it. Thank you.
Yep. That took care of my list.
Motion to approve consent agenda items A through G.
Commissioner Briscoe?
Yeah.
Commissioner Shepard?
Yes.
Bell is a yes. Thank you, staff, for that. I know some of it was last minute. Now we're going to move on to our presentation, Airport Industrial Park Properties.
Great, thank you, Commissioners. Good afternoon. Brian Gowron, Director of Environmental and Planning Services. So, yeah, this update is builds on a follow-up to the work study session that the Commission staff and some members of the public and stakeholders had out by the airport properties back in April. It's a very similar update to what we'd had for Blaine last Commission meeting, where we kind of reporting back on some of the work that we've been doing on the longer range planning. This is one where we said we're going to try to do them more promptly, try to get more information back to the Commission in follow-up, so we can kind of let you know what, excuse me, what we're working on, kind of what we took away from that. Also, what we sent out last week to the Commission was a more detailed narrative of that summary with the summary notes and what we're going to see in this presentation. So we'll also probably try to get that up on that report up onto the port's website as well. So this is just kind of a summary of that. So one thing I also wanted just to clarify is that in the work study session, as well as what we're going to be reviewing here today, is primarily focused on the properties around the operational area of BLI, of the airport itself. And that was for a couple reasons. One is that, I think there's just very specific regulatory requirements working closely. The aviation division works very closely with FAA, and the security issues, all those other things that make BLI itself unique could probably in and of itself could have its own work study, and I think Aviation Division would be happy to do that. But because we were looking more broadly, the majority of this conversation is going to focus on the properties around the airport. So just for clarification on that. So similar to the Blaine presentation, just going to talk through kind of what we're going to include here. We're going to review a little bit of the port team and the stakeholders that were involved in this process and that are involved in the kind of long-term planning here. Review just for some context the current tenants that we have out there. We'll highlight one of the takeaways that staff had from that work study session was kind of a phased approach, looking at this process from short-term, mid-term, long-term kind of planning. Highlight some of the projects that are underway that are kind of in this first phase of work, as well as this concept of a business development and recruitment plan that came out of that work studies discussion. And then kind of just highlight the further out future phases that we anticipate, kind of the work involved in that and next steps. So yeah, like almost all of the projects at the port, that takes a team. There's very few projects that don't cross divisions. So this one in particular has a big chunk of team and staff. And as this presentation, will focus because it's a planning perspective. I'll be presenting it. The members of our team that have the expertise are here. They can address any questions. And in the future, as these projects that we'll talk about here today come forward, they'll probably be the ones presenting on those individual projects or those elements. But so that includes the Aviation Division, of course. Real estate has a huge part here in the industrial park, economic development as we do the business and recruitment plan, planning team, facilities, engineering, and finance, of course, because as all these things cost money if we choose to do them. So really having a broad team involved in this work study and the kind of work that we're pulling together. Some of the other stakeholders that we have that are at the table for all of these projects is the Whatcom County Planning Department. If you recall, there's an area of these properties that are under a planned unit development and a binding site plan that have specific rules and process that for any project that we have to do or we're going to do out there, we have to work closely with Whatcom County. And we have a great working relationship with them, so we are often talking to them about prospective projects, that kind of thing. We're going to ramp up our coordination with the aviation group and their advisory committee, the BIAC. Obviously, any project that could impact our existing port tenants out there, or if they want to be expanding or growing, we're working with them on those. And then there's a number of other stakeholders like, FAA we have to be coordinating with in certain scenarios, and then just the general public and the population as well. So a big group working on all of these different things out there. So this is a figure, or these two figures kind of show some of our existing tenants. Just as a reminder, there are a lot of existing tenants out around the properties around the airport. There's a lot of room for growth as well. But we have Woodstone, which is a large employer. Over here on the left-hand side of the left-hand figure, then we have on the air side, we have Alpha Air Park, that newly constructed aviation, or the hangars. That's inside the fence, so that's an example where we have those coordinated steps where we have some tenants and users that are inside the secure area, but we're coordinating with the adjacent uses. Homeland Security, we have the car parts manufacturing facility, Whatcom County facilities, some other auto parts. There's a lot of different diverse uses out there in the industrial park. And then up on the right-hand side figure, then as we get closer to the terminal, we obviously have the hotel, the Holiday Inn, the Pacific Cataract Laser Institute, and then FedEx. So those are our existing tenants and then there's a few others kind of scattered around there as well. So quite a few jobs and associated work out there already. So jumping into what staff kind of took away from this work study, and I think this is what we heard the commission's preference was to kind of start looking at this as a phased approach. And we've broken these phases out just generally kind of as a buckets of time. There's no hard dates or triggers that make us trip from phase 1 to phase 2, but it's just helping us think the way to think about the projects out here. So phase 1, we're kind of talking about things that are happening right now that are current through the next 3 years or so. At phase 2, we're saying is, things in the next 2 to 5 years, and then phase 3 is really from 5 to 15 beyond. So that's what we'll be walking through here today. And as you'll see, the majority of the things that have details are the things that are right in front of us that we're working on. And then as we go down into phase 2 and 3, you'll see the details get a little less precise. So I'll walk through these, and then we'll have some specific slides on some of these as well. So one of the key things is to support our ongoing projects, obviously. So we have just recently signed a lease with a developer for the Lot C that Real Estate's managing. And then across the street from that is a parking lot expansion that, because of this Lot C, impacts some of the uses out there. So I'll have a couple slides on that. The business and development and recruitment plan, I think that was a really interesting conversation that we had, and we'll have a more detail on that too. But the next few steps of this will be to scope that out, find out kind of how we want to approach that, look at a consultant, getting a consultant on board. I think that's one where we could have a facilitated discussion, use that process to engage with the community more, engage with the stakeholders and the commission. We talked a lot about wetlands at that meeting. There's a lot of wetland issues that we're looking at addressing. So right now we're looking at all of the different possible strategies that we could employ for mitigating wetlands, including using the City of Bellingham's bank that's on the recently created Wetland Mitigation Bank. Looking at kind of on-site mitigation or continuing the kind of phase 2 of wetland mitigation that we had built phase 1 out by the Slater Road. Are there opportunities to expand that? So we're looking at all those things as well as coordinating with other partners that may have wetland mitigation opportunities. The other one that came up that was kind of, I think, unexpected, it was great. There were some stakeholders at this meeting that were existing tenants that were looking for expansion opportunities in the aeronautical industry. And I think that was not something that we had expected from staff. It's something we hadn't talked much about, but it really helped us kind of focus on some opportunities for this D14 development area. I'll talk about that on another slide. And then as we get these things moving, we've also looked at how we're going to fund this. Tyler mentioned at that meeting that the Economic Development Investment Board for Whatcom County may be a good source of funding for infrastructure investment, in a few years down the road. So we'll start priming that, having those discussions, letting them know that these are areas and what kind of businesses could work out there and how that we could use those EDI funds potentially. And then coordinating with the new air traffic control tower with FAA. And then a few other things that we'll be working on right now is I think some site improvements and site preparation. There's an old building that should be looked at being taken down. There's a lot of vegetation management that we could look at, opening up some of the areas where there aren't wetlands to kind of clear the area out to really make it more look like an inviting business park. So I think we've got a few things like that are on our radar as well. So just to go into a little more detail on
Brian,
some of...
could I,
oh, yeah.
For backing up a slide, for exploring grant opportunities, we had talked about potential of commerce grants. Have we had a chance to scope out if there are any relevant grant opportunities from commerce or other agencies that are right for kind of that planning money? I don't think correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think EDI funds planning, but certainly we have been successful. Mike has been successful getting commerce grants for planning purposes in the past. And we may be able to get a similar for this type of purpose here.
Yeah, that's right. We haven't looked at them specifically. We did list those in that report, some of the examples of where they could be. I think that one of the takeaways is we're going to start looking at that as part of the funding for the business development and recruitment plan. Yeah, I think commerce grants, there was a few other examples. We haven't dove deep yet to find out what exactly is available, but we definitely will be looking for other funding sources, whether it's from commerce or state expenditure or something like that. But we'll be continuing to look for opportunities for that. Yeah, I think you're right. EDI. Well, when we're talking about EDI, we've been kind of getting them ready for the larger investment when we're ready to do the infrastructure side of things, but making sure that they're familiar with this is in the planning phases and that keeping the board informed on this is a project that will be coming down the road.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this is something that FAA funds. Matt, you might be able to answer this. This is certainly outside of aeronautical operations, but when we met with the FAA in DC a couple of years ago, we talked about airports as economic drivers, and they just lit up when they heard that. The first thing they said is, "That's fantastic. That's exactly what we want our partners saying about the potential of airports in their communities." And so, do we think FAA would have any resources for business planning?
Yes, Matt Rodriguez, Director of Aviation at the Bellingham International Airport. To answer your question is most likely no. On the flip side, though, they do love aeronautical use. So that means if we are able to have areas of the airport that is developable, then we can use FAA, AIP entitlements, or other means of funding mechanisms from the federal government to cover certain projects like taxiways and stuff that contributes to the movement of aircraft.
Okay. So is that, when we're thinking about FAA funding, is that going to be thinking more in the fence type funding and not as much outside, even if it's aeronautical?
That's correct. Most of all of the aeronautical revenue takes place inside the fence, and then non-aeronautical revenue is primarily outside the fence.
Okay, so when we're ready for that kind of west side of the runway for potentially programming that for other aeronautical-related use, that requires some infrastructure investment since there's nothing there currently, we're really going to be looking for some coordinated help from FAA.
That's correct, and that'd be a substantial grant in order to. It would have to be a phased approach, but yes, we would lean onto the federal government for funding for that development.
Okay, thanks for that clarification.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we have there'll be a couple examples of that where we're planning for that too. Like there's the D14 development, that's an airside thing where we may have some taxiway funding. We'll be looking at the FAA for that infrastructure. Yeah. So just jumping into the little more detail on the projects that are underway right now. This is the Lot C development that the commission approved a lease with this developer. The real estate did a great job of putting RFP out for development opportunity on Lot C, and we got a response that met the criteria we were looking for. The commission approved a lease back in April, so they're just now starting to develop the more detailed permitting and design. Now that lease is in place, that construction project will bring $7 to $10 million worth of private investment into the community for the design and construction. The annual revenue to the port is about $100,000 a year, and this project does support expansion of an existing tenant out there. So this is a property that an existing tenant is kind of grown out of space, and they're going to try to expand into one of these two buildings as well. So. Good example of trying to spur development and economic development in the airport industrial park, and we're anticipating construction on that project in 2026, 2027 timeframe. The related project, which is it's just a parking lot, not super exciting, but it's a good example of as we develop out there, we need to kind of be thinking and planning forward, is that the Emergency Operations Center, which is, Whatcom County, Bellingham, when they're looking at staffing for emergency events, they're located right across the street here. This is Lot C that I was just referring to. The Emergency Operations Center is in this building, and when they have an emergency response like the Sumas floods or large training exercises for with the refineries, they were stakeholders that were at the meeting. I think you heard them talking about their need for parking and staffing ability to staff those events. That they were using Lot C, and so with that now going into development, we need to find another way to accommodate those uses. So right across the street here, or right next to the EOC, is actually the development area 18, and so we're planning for a gravel parking lot for that area. One of the challenges is that there is an identified wetland in the middle there. We do have a determination from the Army Corps of Engineers that it's not a wetland that would require permitting through the federal government to fill that or modify that, but there will still be state and local permits, and we have to work through that process as well. So we're underway with that right now. We're revising the design to really fit the needs of what the users, as well as the port and the EOC, getting some feedback from them, and then we'll be submitting permits to modify that lot into a kind of a parking area, which will support that, as well as set the stage for future development of that lot for something else as well. So the other part that was an item that I mentioned earlier that was part of the phase 1 work was this idea of a business and development and recruitment plan. So this is a good example of, I think, where a consultant team could bring more to the table. The port staff can compile this information, tell you what existing work that we're doing, but when we're looking towards like a visioning or a market analysis or specialized recruitment of aeronautical businesses and that sort of thing, as well as like circulation, all that. So this is where bringing a consultant on board, I think, could be really helpful. So what we anticipated was preparing a scope of that plan, working with our stakeholders, the aeronautical users, other folks, to get an idea of what we would be looking for an expertise. Put that out for a solicitation for consultant support in maybe even by the end of this year, but for sure early 2026, pending commission budget discussions. And we'll be compiling existing information, asking them to evaluate market conditions, doing some stakeholder engagement. I think this is where we could have facilitated discussion with stakeholders. The consultants are often really helpful at that process, and this is the end product that I think that information could be helpful to have somebody working on that. And then with recommendations on development parcels, layouts, kind of what type of infrastructure we might need, and all of that could come out of this development plan. That then could help inform our longer-term decisions and our budgeting process over the next few years as well. So that's a piece of work that will be probably led by economic development, and then but working with all the team members as well. So this is the other one that came up that I mentioned earlier, just with a little more detail here, is this airside development opportunities on the D14 property. Wasn't something that was really on our radar from a staff perspective, but the stakeholders that came and talked about their needs for expanding, they're kind of sandwiched into a small hangar. They need airside in the secure area, but also need deliveries and other things in the non-secure area. So it was a really unique situation that was really informative for staff to hear. So this is an item that then was kind of pulled into phase 1 work that we thought we could engage with aeronautical stakeholder users, find out a little bit more like what types of needs, what size of facilities, what types of access, all that information that they would have a lot more details on. So start working with that team and pulling together a bit more concrete concept of what that could look like. You'll see here, these blue and green hashed areas, though, are also wetlands. So there's a lot of wetland challenges out here. But we may have an opportunity of working with the FAA on their air traffic control tower relocation. They do have line of sight issues that Matt has mentioned recently that may be some areas in this parcel itself that needs to be either trees removed, wetlands filled as part of that project in and of itself. So we may have some other, again, looking at mitigation strategies for the wetlands is a big part of what staff's going to be working on. We'll also, as I mentioned, we'll brief the EDI board on this, and then within this probably first phase, hopefully we'll get enough information that we could, within the next couple of years, even start initiating some design or permitting process. So and there's a few other items that were in the phase 1 that are in the write-up, but they were mostly kind of cleaning up items, doing some building demo, that sort of thing. So kicking over into what we see as kind of now the longer range stuff, phase 2, we're looking like the next 2 to 5 years. A lot of this you'll see is focused on this D14 area, as well as looking at things that came out of this business development and recruitment plan. So really, hopefully we'll be in design and permitting for this aeronautical use on the D14. Wetland mitigation we'll have to complete. This is where we could be looking for some FAA grants for taxiway expansion. Then actually maybe even starting construction on this project within that 5-year window. I think that seems realistic. There's a lot to do to get there from where we are today, but I think that would be a realistic goal. Securing outside funding, and then in parallel to all this, continuing to always look for other industrial park development opportunities, but hopefully focused on things that came out of that business development plan. And then the last one here is the really kind of farther out, 5 to 15 years plus. This is, Commissioner Shepard, what I think you were referencing. This is the airport layout plan. This is the runway here on the west side of the runway, having some potential development opportunities that's identified in the adopted master plan for some aeronautical uses or some commercial and aeronautical uses. But as we mentioned, there's no infrastructure out there. There's no roads. There's no access, no water. So no utilities. So a lot of work to plan that out. I think that's something we should be starting now, looking at our needs. Like, what would that look like? What are the types of uses, and how that could get played out over the next number of years. But so starting to work on that, but knowing that's a longer time horizon. Other few things that are kind of on our staff's radar is tracking the City of Bellingham's annexation process. A couple of years ago, city started the annexation process for Alderwood neighborhood, which included areas up to the airport, not including the secure area, but it did include the industrial park areas and the associated properties. They pulled back on that for a number of reasons and put it on pause, but I do anticipate within this time frame that would be likely something that could come back up. So we were aware of it and involved in it. They were very well coordinated and collaborative, but I just anticipate this is something we'll be needing to track. Also, this Commissioner Bell, you had mentioned this one before too. It's just keeping track of the Slater Road and Cope Road areas, working with Whatcom County, Lummi Nation, knowing how that area and those developments could impact or be involved in and around the airport and along I-5 for access and circulation. And then just always continuing to look at other industrial development opportunities out there. So that's kind of the takeaway from staff. I think we've got some more work to do. We'll be coming back to you with all these as these progress, but I'd be happy to address any questions you might have. Our team's here. We'd be any feedback or additional items you'd like to talk to, I'd be happy to go over that.
You want to start?
Sure.
Commissioner Shepherd?
Yeah, just going back a slide for the Cope Road, Lummi Nation Tribal Council consistently brings that up as a question of interest for seeing greater connectivity. I don't know what side of the airport connectivity is possible for that. It seems it would be nice if it could go on the east side, but it's pretty tight over there with I-5. And so I think we're probably looking at a west side opportunity for Cope Road. Do you have any immediate feedback on where that best potential is?
No, not right now. I mean, it's a great question. It's a big challenge. I mean, I think that there's been a lot of interest in connecting along I-5. There's a lot of, it's a really tight pitch point. There's wetlands, there's the freeway, there's DOT. It said, they've talked about, building a tunnel or something, but but that connects to, that's a better connection to the more highly used areas. But going around the west side puts you about into kind of a pinch point around the bridge on Marine Drive and all that. So I think it's something that we could definitely ramp up our discussions on what and how could we do this. Because I know there is interest on lots of parties on connecting that or somehow getting a connection through.
Okay.
But no, I don't have any specifics right now.
All right, well, I'm just going to name it as an interest, and I think you guys know it's an interest as well, and we'll keep that conversation going. I really like the process that we've been in here. I think it's been a great process to go through. I think it's been really informative. I think you've done a nice job facilitating that and bringing in all the different teams. And I think it's really helpful for us to be engaged in that type of planning efforts. I like the phased approach. It helps make it tangible and feasible in my mind to see where these things could happen. My last thing on my mind is it's an inside the fence thing, and so it doesn't immediately fit into this, but the International Arrivals Terminal it's inside the fence. It's within the airport property, but it also has a connection to traffic and flow and use of the facility. We were close to getting some federal funding. Am I correct that federal funding is still on hold for some of the initial work?
From what I am aware, yes.
Okay, so kind of any other update on how we get to that international arrivals facility?
So we have one mechanism that we're going to be pursuing once the notice of funding opportunity is released for the Airport Infrastructure Grant Program. We will be applying for design funding. So there's $1 billion that is going to be issued out to airports nationwide. Of that $1 billion, only 10% of that billion goes to small airports, non-hub airports, and then you have a lot of those non-hub and small airports. So it's going to be slim pickings. So we're going to request that we get a grant submitted for the design. And right now we have Mead and Hunt as our engineer on record. That's going to give us a rough order of magnitude so that we can put that dollar amount into the grant.
Okay. Well, we'll just keep coordinating with our federal lobbying team on this. They've been helpful in the past, and it's probably the #1 biggest thing we can do to acquire additional air service at our airport. And so I continue to think it's a great opportunity, and it's been tricky to figure out the funding mechanisms to make it happen.
I couldn't agree more with you, Commissioner. That'd be an excellent opportunity for us to get additional air service in here with having international arrivals for commercial.
Okay. All right. That's it for me for the moment.
Commissioner Briscoe?
I think things are moving along nicely. The work study, some planning that staff has done is quite good. And I think we've got a plan going forward that we can follow here and improve on. So thank you.
Here we go. So I think a lot of this is short-sighted. Just, and don't take this personally. We've got a whole lot of area around the airport that is outside of what we consider the bounds of the airport. And what I would love to see is, and I think I've said this to you before, is I'd like to see what this looks like from a 20,000-foot view as you look down. What lands are available for industrial ground? We just finished the industrial ground report. We just heard some of that at the Business and Commerce Committee. We're short on industrial ground, and my big fear is, by going the direction that we're going, is that we will do something in an area that will, on a smaller lot, that will essentially define that area in perpetuity. So, for example, the Lot C that we just leased out, you're going to put an industrial park on that for the next 70 years, which by its nature precludes certain activities around it. And it does not include a bigger picture for what that region might have been. It fit into what we wanted for that area. We certainly need more business in the region, but if I take a look at the airport and I look, for example, from the top down, and I'm looking at the area just to the west of the airport, and I see where our borderline goes. If you go back to your first picture.
Oops.
There's a huge opportunity to develop that area into a very large industrial ground. So if you just draw a straight line between ours, but you look further to the west of that, it's not our property necessarily. But it doesn't mean it couldn't be included in what we're going to do for an industrial park, for example.
Right.
And then I look around the county and I look at what's going on in Ferndale on Main Street. That industrial ground is going to be very large, it's going to be well planned out, and it's going to be done in less than 5 years. So there's a lot of planning and infrastructure here that I think needs to be brought to the EDI board for funding to open up the full potential of what the site is. And I think the problem with a phased approach is that we will start to ask for RFPs on property and get responses that may be detrimental to a larger vision on the site. And I've said this ad nauseum, so I'll say it again. We just know that Boeing is going to put 44,000 new planes on the market in the next 20 years. And of those 44,000 planes, there's going to be 120 subcontractors. And if we only get 10% of those subcontractors, we need a place to put them. And I'm really desirous to have a look at all of our industrial ground and re-envision it for 2025. And look at the properties that we have and say, with the city or with the counties involved, what areas should we be rezoning into industrial? Because we're going to be putting infrastructure in there. So why not look beyond that and say, what is the big picture for all of the airport? What's the big picture for Mitchell Way, for example? We hear that may take a while or that we're reserving it for parking. What are the chances we're going to need the parking? I mean, I want to do that kind of odds assessment. So what I'm basically saying is, I like your idea of bringing a consultant in, but not necessarily for the marketing study. I want to know what this industrial park could look like if we had a big picture vision of it. What does that area west of the airport look like? Who owns it? What's possible? What are the wetlands? How does an industrial park look? If you're coming in from the north, it's probably the most accessible way for commercial vehicles to come to the airport without disrupting traffic from the south. So as I look at that, and we've got a tribal opportunity up north, to work with them to say, you can enhance our whole vision of this if we work together on that. And also, how do we create a cargo terminal on an airport that doesn't necessarily have huge cargo capacity? If we're going to be looking at enhancing the airport, can we do something that will bring larger cargo planes in? I mean, I'm spitballing here, but really that's what I was looking for. And my fear is going down the road that we're going down, is that we're going to RFP out a piece of property that's going to naturally preclude something bigger and better because we just didn't take the time to go through the visioning process with all of our stakeholders.
Sure.
And I say that too about maybe Woodstone and some of those others. What's their employment forecast going forward? What's their lot going to look like? How much of their lot are we going to, can we take back and put into a greater scale along Mitchell Way? That really was what I was looking for and what I would like to look for.
Yeah, no, I think we're not that far off. This is a report out from what we talked about at the work study, right? And so what we staff heard was, and is basically what you're saying is that business development and recruitment plan will accomplish a lot of that. I think we're going to need some clarity from the commission on what specifically you're looking for. I mean, and we'll watch this back and get take notes on that stuff because that's what we'll be asking the consultant to help us with. Because that's not, A, bandwidth, B, not our area of expertise, and it's a very diverse set of things. But we can help manage that and help drive the consultant to those discussions. And that it's exactly right. What we talked about was building on the industrial land surveys, which was really county-wide and very, very large scale, like not much detail. Now, this could take that and get more granular at the airport and surrounding properties, whether they're port or otherwise, and looking at those opportunities. So yeah, I think that that's what we're looking at as not the phasing is not the development work. This is more like how staff is looking at what's in our immediate horizon of time and workload, what's in our next few years, and just so we can be mapping out, knowing that some of this, yeah, we can start the discussion of it. We know that just the permitting and time frame and all of those pieces to come together will take a number of years to actually implement, but this is the kind of the roadmap for staff, what we're hearing from commission discussions, and then these projects will come forward individually, but knowing that they're kind of guided by this team that's hearing that from the commission. So I think we're on the same page.
What I heard you say is that, yes, do this work and this planning, but look outside of what the port owns and work in partnership with economic development and other entities to pull those folks in that process to understand what would need.
Just a simple discussion with some members of the city and their desire to have more industrial ground as well. I mean, the realization is now hitting this community that we need jobs. We can't just keep going the way we're going, that we actually need to invest in that. So it's a longer term strategy, and that is, where do we need to put infrastructure? And how do we go to the EDI board and fund those things that need to be funded to put the kind of infrastructure in that'll actually create real work and real livings for people. And over the last few years, we've seen a lot of EDI money go to places that didn't necessarily produce a job. They did a lot of things, but they didn't necessarily bring to the table the things that we have the ability to bring to the table. With a transportation corridor there, with an airport here, and with a bunch of available land, and I think willing partners to our north with the tribes, and also probably to the west. I don't know who they are. Sure. But I think we've got some willing partners that we can craft a bigger vision and put something really spectacular on the airport. I would love to see that vision come forward before we put an RFP out for another parcel.
Sure.
So again, if we parcel out one at a time, we're at the whim of whoever looks down on that site and they say, well, there's a 5-acre parcel. What am I going to do with that? That doesn't fit my needs. But if it's part of a bigger plan where there's an industrial complex in there and they can see where they fit into that program, you're going to get a lot more interest and a lot more diverse growth. At least from my perspective. I could be smoking something funny, but.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree, Commissioner. I mean, I think that these are a couple examples of things that we pulled forward that were similar. Port of Kalama on the left there, that's a smaller scale business park development. The one on the right there, I think, is Port of Shelton. That's kind of what we're talking about, looking at the broadly, like all these kind of your typical like land use planning and visioning that allows us to kind of put all of these different elements together. And that's along with some other maybe market analysis, like what is like we don't all fully understand like what is the aeronautical market that it would be something we want to pursue. And so I think all of those pieces are what we're envisioning for that plan.
And just to put an exclamation point on that, a private developer saw an opportunity outside of Ferndale to put a major industrial park? Why didn't they look here, right? What are we doing wrong that somebody is going to invest those kind of resources in a place where we've got more assets at our disposal than that has, and the same kind of infrastructure needs. So I just want to make sure that we don't miss those opportunities as they come up. We want to make sure we capture investment, especially if it's private investment, in those kind of opportunities. But I want to make sure that this looks attractive to somebody who wants to come in and do that kind of a major development. I think this airport is just ripe for that.
I think the other thing to consider is like the Port of Kalama, for example. I mean, the port did it. I mean, it may not have to be I mean, so we're hoping that there'll be a kind of a menu of different kind of discussion options. So we're evaluating all those different things.
When we go to the public and they say, what's going on at the airport? The answer isn't, well, we're just going to RFP out. Sure. That's not the answer. The answer is we're going to put a vision on the airport. It's going to be a major vision. It's going to encompass what is possible out there. We may not get what is possible, but we'll get a lot better opportunities if we paint that vision rather than do it piecemeal.
Sure.
That's just my take on that.
Commissioner Bell, I'd like to interject something here if I could.
Sure.
So I think you kind of hit the nail on the head with why did the business go out there and build their park out by Ferndale? And maybe Tyler can answer this question, but I think the cost of doing business inside the Bellingham city limits is much more than the cost of doing business where they went.
We're not in the city limits.
That needs to be figured in. Okay. Half our airport is, half isn't.
I think that we're in the urban growth area, not in the city limits proper.
And, I think that it's a good question to think about, why business parks are going where they are. For me, I really think the opportunity is aeronautical service. And so just the fact that a business park didn't come here, that's okay to me because it may not be an aeronautical related business park. So I'm going to just keep being stubborn that the airport's a unique asset and it should be tooled for aeronautical use whenever possible. And I think that's what I hope to get from some of this business development planning process is bringing some people who have some more of that expertise and skills to help us understand who's out there, who may come, what we need to do to attract. And so you can tell we want to be involved in the scoping of that RFQ, so make sure we are.
Definitely.
And I will concur that it should be aeronautical. I mean, that's really my focal point is that I want to know why the jobs are going to Kansas City, for example, to make parts for the Boeing planes when we could easily, if we did the right moves, put a 20-year plan in place to accommodate some of that.
Right.
But I also see opportunities for a cargo terminal and other airport-related activities. It's a tremendous asset. I just want to make sure we make the most of it.
That sounds like all part of the business development
Yep.
plan
Indeed.
and part of getting a consultant on board.
Do we have the runway length to support cargo planes? I know we do some cargo for FedEx and other, but
Yes, we can accommodate up to 737, 700s, and 800s for cargo, which is a substantial size aircraft, so we can.
that most of what industry standard is for cargo.
For some cargo, some heavier cargo, you look at Airbuses 330s and above, they're carrying a lot of tonnage.
Yeah, but we certainly could accommodate increased cargo that's
Yep.
air-based.
Yes, sir.
And that would just take reimagining what happens at the north end of the airport and maybe saying, how do we get trucks into the north instead of coming through the, I mean, those are the kind of visioning things. And I think we learned a lot by having stakeholders at the meeting. I think we gained a lot of information about what their plans are, what they were doing because we weren't ready for them, right? We weren't ready to accommodate them in a different building. So they were doing it in their hangars. I think getting all of the stakeholders involved saying, what do you want to do with your land? What do you want to do here? Bring the tribe in to say, what do you want to do in the north? How can we make this a joint effort, industrial park, so you benefit as well as we do? That's really, if we're going to go for a consultant, I would like to have the polling of our current industries, current stakeholders, current opinion leaders in that regard, Certainly the city and the county need to be involved with their planning departments. All of those people come together to say, what would you like to see? And how do we increase our industrial capacity in that region? And I've talked enough. Commissioner Briscoe, tell me what else I said wrong.
Nothing.
One thing, you didn't say anything wrong. You didn't say anything wrong, but what I would ask is that the commission reminds itself that the workload, it's easy for us to sit up on this bench and say, we want this, we want this, we want this, we'd like to see this, we'd like to see that, we want to do this, we want to do that. There's a tremendous workload already on our staff. I just want to make sure that the commission reminds itself that we don't overload staff and take staff away from things that are already in the works and at hand, that we can accommodate everything that we're asking for without burying staff.
And-
That's very, very important to me, that we do not overload staff.
And I concur, and I'll go back to, I said over 3 different meetings that I thought this was going to be a burden for staff, and that we needed to bring someone on. So I continue down that road. I think it's going to take expertise outside of this arena, and I think it's going to take an expenditure. I think the comment back was that's going to take $200,000 or $300,000. Tamara, I'm sorry. But I think the return on investment for doing this well will more than pay for itself down the road. And I think we owe it to ourselves to do that kind of planning on our industrial ground.
I was just going to add, if I can, that I think you'll see, I think the workload, we'll see the prioritization as we get into budget season, right? And so we'll have several more of these planning exercises for Fairhaven area, for the downtown waterfront. And so we'll be looking to you for how we prioritize that from a budget standpoint. So I think that helps with workload prioritization.
Yeah, and I would just echo that I think that this process is actually really helpful to staff. I don't think it's a burden. No, I think it's just understanding that, that once we get that prioritization, then we get it in the budget, and it's a kind of a systematic thing here that I think we took a lot out of this, and that I would agree that this was, the discussion allowed us to get an understanding of what the commission was looking for, prioritization of those things, and then we'll be bringing the consultant team on that does have those and has more capacity, and it's a team and all that. So yeah, I think that we're moving in the same direction, and I think that these work sessions are helpful. Yeah. All right. Anything else?
No, thank you.
Okay, thanks, commissioners.
All right, we're on to our action item.
Motion to approve 2 new leases with Aircraft Hangars Northwest LLC and authorize the interim executive director to execute documents needed for the proposed development at Bellingham International Airport.
Thank you, Tracy. Terry Lahi again, property manager. The lease and development agreements in front of the commission for consideration today are for 30 years and with 2 5-year renewal options on them. They're for 2 hangar development complexes, well, not complexes, 2 hangar development buildings. One is for a box hangar. There'll be about 7 units in that. And the other one is for T hangars with about 20 units in that facility. There is, during the development process, there is a no rent construction period until the building's 12 months from when they start construction or first time of occupancy. After that, the rents will kick in at the appraised value of the property at 9% rate of return. The port will be moving ahead with 2 binding site plans so we can get these properties and get them permitted for the buildings. The developer, which is Aircraft Hangars Northwest, they're planning or anticipating having both buildings constructed by December of 2026. So it should be a fast turnaround time for this. Gary Kocher, who is Aircraft Hangars Northwest, the developer, he's in the crowd with us today if you have any questions regarding the development. Other than that, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them for you. And we do recommend approval of this transaction.
Commissioner Briscoe?
So these are just adding more hangars to our complex that we have now. It's pretty much just newer, but kind of the same thing as we have there now. Is that correct?
That is correct, sir.
Thank you. That's all I have.
And just to add on, these would be primarily general aviation aircraft that would go in there for storage and work being done on those. Is that correct?
The intent, I believe, is to condominiumize them, so they will be up for sale, both the buildings. Hence, we have two separate leases. The actual use will be for aeronautical uses and for corporate or personal hangars, yes.
Okay. So GA craft.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And do you guys already have, are you seeing demand for these? Are you kind of leasing? Are you, how do you know there is sufficient demand for what you're building?
Great question.
If you would come to the mic, introduce yourself and.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Gary Coker. I'm with Aircraft Hangars Northwest. And as you can see there from the picture, yes, we actually have quite a showing of interest. The box hangars, 50 by 50 box hangars, we have all 7 of them have been reserved, and we actually have 2 more people on the wait list. We've got a couple of folks have shown an interest in actually creating businesses there, such as what you see at Six Pack Aero, where they're working on upgrading avionics and things like that with aircraft. And there's a lot of flexibility with those hangars. You can put anything up to a smaller King Air in there. So there certainly is some opportunities there for maybe Part 135 and that such. With the T hangars, significantly smaller product. That's going to be a general aviation single engine, maybe some small twins like a Seneca can fit in there. Right now we've got interest in 8 of those. The demand on those, I would say, is not quite as high, but it's also a different clientele. And the belief is that once we break ground, there will be a renewed interest in that, because a lot of folks that were talking to me saying, well, we'll wait and see if it's actually going to happen. So there's been a lot of concern about whether or not that's going to happen. I'm a local guy from the Northwest, grew up in Blaine. So we're going to be looking to use all local contractors, local business, tens of thousands of man hours here for local folks.
Okay. All right. That's good to hear.
All right.
Do you have a follow-up or?
Yeah. Do we have plans to, since you clearly reserved all of the larger ones, is there a plan in place to maybe put more of those? Especially if you've got a waiting list?
We've been in discussion. I've actually spoke with Terry about that already. There is the availability to convert some of those T hangars into box hangars, which, I'm whatever the community needs in this regards. I mean, a little background on this. I bought an airplane last year. I've been flying forever. I flew in the Navy and finally got my wife to agree to let me buy an airplane last year. And we quickly found out there's nowhere to park them. Basically from Bellingham all the way down to Auburn, wait lists are anywhere from 3 years to 10 years for hangars. So what happens is they come up, they're usually sold if they're for sale, or they are quickly rented to folks on the waiting list. So that was the genesis of this. I'm building hangars. One of them is actually earmarked for myself, so I can put my airplane in there and get it off out of the elements.
So you would look at converting some of the smaller ones into the larger ones, because
Yes.
that seems to be where the market's taken you.
Yeah, and that is absolutely on the plan, which is why I requested Terry, and I appreciate everybody that I've been working with so far, at least being agreeable, and having 2 separate buildings, 2 separate leases gives us that flexibility to do that.
And if these are condominiumized, then how do the lease payments come back to the port? Will there be one lease, one master lease?
Yes, so once we get
There'll
to
be
a
an HOA.
point of purchase ownership, the HOA, there'll be a hangar owner association, will then convert the lease with Aircraft Hangars Northwest into a lease with I'm calling it Baker and Shuckson, so it'll be the Baker Shuckson Homeowners or Aircraft Hangar Owners Association. That association will then assume the lease and all the responsibilities with that, complying with the lease terms.
Yeah. Commissioners will be no different from the other condominiums we have out there. So it's a ground lease with each individual condominium unit. Sorry, not unit, association.
Yeah.
Good. Matthew, if you would weigh in, we're hearing from real estate here primarily and from the tenant, and, GA represents an important part of our airport community, and we don't always build new facilities for them, and so this looks like it has a lot of opportunity. I just wanted to have you weigh in.
Yeah, it's a fantastic opportunity, Commissioner. Currently, right now, what we have on the waiting list, and this is just for the port-owned hangars, we have 34 individuals waiting for T hangars, which equates to about a 4 to 5 year wait list. So the box hangars go quick. There's a lot of demand and high interest for those, but there's also just as high of an interest for those T hangars as well. So what the airport is going to do in return, seeing as you can see how there are some tie downs that are going to be consumed by the footprint of these hangars, is we did a quick analysis of what the tie down capacity or occupancy rate was. So in the last 6 years, so year to date to 2025, we haven't seen anything over 50% for tie downs. So with these two hangars going into place, we will lose about 36 tie downs, which is roughly over half of our total tie downs. However, we do have some space on towards the east side where we can have 11 additional tie downs, which that will place us back into roughly at the high point 82% occupancy rate. So there'll still be enough tie downs for general aviators coming through. If they want to do a week tie down or a month to month tie down or a daily tie down, we'll still have that availability.
Okay, that's really helpful. Thank you. Yep.
I'm super happy we're talking about a wait list and somewhere other than the marinas.
I know, this is a wait list we never hear about. I don't get as many complaints on this one, obviously.
That was my maritime hat.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
I think that's all my questions.
Anything else, Commissioner Briscoe? Okay,
No, I'm good, thanks.
let's nail this sucker.
Motion to approve 2 new leases with Aircraft Hangars Northwest LLC and approve the interim executive director to execute documents needed for the proposed development at Bellingham International Airport.
Commissioner Shepard?
Yes.
Commissioner Briscoe?
Yes.
Commissioner Bell is a yes. Welcome. Thank you.
Very good.
All right, now we're going to the end of the meeting, public comment. Anybody wishing to address the commission on any matters that you see fit? Oh, please.
This is gentle. I'm John Survey, live in Bellingham, and follow the port for many years. I was not going to comment, but watching the presentation on the airport, one thing that I kept watching for is missing. The runway is not long enough. We can take cargo planes in, we can take passenger planes in, but they can't take off fully loaded, they can't take off fully fueled. Everybody knows this. Maybe a cargo plane can land with a big cargo in our 7,000-foot runway or less than 7,000, but they can't take off with a heavy cargo if we're manufacturing stuff here. They have to truck it out. We could easily extend the runway 700 more feet to the south. Move the ILS, you can have the pad, you don't have to disrupt the road. We have the room. And that would be a critical difference in terms of what planes could fly in here. And I think having a fully functional airport that can take planes with the proper runways and proper ILS and proper approaches, and where the tower can see all of the taxiways, which is not a current situation, would enhance the basic airport to a fully functioning airport. I'm glad to see that a new control tower is on the list. I hope it's in a place that it's going to be able to see everything and that it's actually a fully functioning control tower as opposed to the absolutely bare bones, non-existing equipment control tower we've lived with for decades. Then you build infrastructure in industrial parks and everything else that you want to do around it. But we do not have a safe, fully functioning airport that can take 737s even that are fully loaded and fully fueled onto our airport. And we all know this. So look at a 700-foot extension to the south. You can do it. You can do your pads. You can do your runoffs. You can do everything. and you don't disrupt anything, and you don't even have any houses to clear away. The port did that for you, the commissioners did that for you 30 years ago, and it was a hell of a fight. So that's my only suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody online? Anybody else in the audience wishing to speak? Eric?
I probably should.
Oh,
I just appreciated
Name-
what,
name-
my name's Brian Gass. I want to say I appreciate you talking about the bigger picture. I'm a real estate agent, and one of the biggest pet peeves I have is that we are like the second most expensive place to live in the entire state, second to Seattle. And we really they don't do a good enough job of bringing jobs in. They talk a lot about affordable housing to subsidize rent, but they don't bring in higher paying jobs. And I feel the port is in a unique position to really be that catalyst for bringing that type of economic activity back to the port. And they shouldn't, not that you wouldn't, I know you do, but people should know that it's one of the unique places and entities that will give that push that will help, because that will bring the prices back, to reasonable places for people here in Bellingham. So I do applaud you for bringing that up and having that opportunity for everybody. And so I hope it works out great for you, all right? Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
yeah, it's one of my pet peeves. We subsidize housing, but we don't put jobs on the street to help people pay for their own housing. And there's no equity being built in subsidized housing. So we've got to figure out a way to build equity, which is how you create real wealth in families. All right, other business, Commissioner Briscoe.
I'm going to defer to you at this time.
Commissioner Shepard.
I just have one item for our next meeting. I would like to have on our agenda item for consideration a discussion to put on the ballot a measure for increasing the commission size to 5 commissioners. We've discussed it previously. We had a hearing on the topic. We elicited a number of opinions from folks who have come in. And our timeline that we've been tracking is to have this available for the November ballot. It's a general ballot that gets the most visibility, gets the most attention from the voters, and I think gives the people of Whatcom County the best opportunity to weigh in on this decision. So I would like to ask that staff work with legal to prepare that for our discussion at our next meeting, if there is sufficient support.
Will do.
I'm unclear about the time frame on that. Holly, can you?
Absolutely. So the way the statutes are written, it's a little bit confusing. So if you are aiming for having the first election, right, it would be two elections, assuming the first one is successful. So the first election is whether or not to expand the commission from 3 to 5. And then the second election later, at a later date, is to actually vote for the commissioners to fill those additional spots. So if you want that first election on the November, November 4th, 2025 ballot, then the July meeting would be the deadline for that resolution, because it needs to be submitted to the Whatcom County Auditor by August 5th in order to make the actual ballot. You don't have it, right, because you only have one meeting in July.
Right.
And then your next meeting after that would be past the deadline for the auditor.
And so is there a reason why we couldn't do it tonight? Do we have a resolution in hand?
Staff and I have worked on drafting one. We do have a draft one. It doesn't have a resolution number on it. And I don't know, excuse me, I don't know if that's something that you wanted to put on the agenda or just have the kind of more discussion about it today and put it on the agenda for the next meeting. It's up to the commission.
For me, I think
I think that we need to start using protocol here, and we did some stuff in last meeting that really wasn't done quite like it should have been, and I don't want to see us drawing stuff out of thin air here and making a motion on it and voting on it when it's not on the agenda for people to speak to.
No, I agree, Bobby.
Let's not get the cart in front of the horse here again.
No, I just thought there was a motion that we had to make this meeting in order to get it on the next one, so that was my understanding.
No, I believe that the protocol was more have a discussion about it at this meeting, and then we can make sure that the resolution action items align with what it is the commission wanted to discuss, rather than just having it as a late add to the agenda, or if it's on the agenda but you haven't discussed it in a few months, the public could be a bit surprised.
Agreed.
Okay. That was all.
I'm in favor of bringing it next commission. So what's the process for getting the resolution circulated so that we can approve it before it goes on the?
Yeah, we'll add it to the agenda for next week, and so you'll see it when it comes out with your regular agenda.
Commissioner Briscoe?
Yeah, there seems to be an urgency to get this on the ballot, and I haven't heard very much from the people. I'd certainly like to hear from the public and what they think about this. I really don't care either way. It's up to the people. It's their port. But I'd certainly like to find out what the main reason for putting this on the agenda now is all about, or what the main reason for adding 2 more commissioners is all about, because I'm not quite clear on that.
Yeah, I'll just give you my 2 cents worth, having just gone through quite a couple of weeks here at the port. There is nothing I would have liked more than to have had a discussion with a fellow commissioner. And we have been prohibited from doing that. And I can say from my time in Bellingham that we are probably the only 3-commissioner port commission that didn't talk outside of port commissions. I think you look back in time and there's been a great breach in that. It's very difficult to do this job if you hold firm to the no talking outside of public meetings or holding firm to executive sessions and those topics. It's a very difficult communication to have. And I can find nothing more valuable than a one-on-one discussion to flesh out ideas, to find out if your intuitions are correct, to find out if you've got a proper read on a situation, than to be able to talk to a fellow commissioner and not have it filtered through a staff or through anybody else in the community. So from my standpoint, it's incredibly helpful for us to be able to have some kind of a dialogue with at least one other commissioner on any given subject throughout a process. And I think that's been lacking. So from my own personal standpoint, I view the 3-commission structure as being a roadblock to adequate communication and adequate information sharing amongst commissioners. That's just my position. You're just going to let that sit, okay?
I already said my piece.
Okay.
So Holly, could you explain about the commissioners talking to each other, how far that can go so that the public understands what the rules are? Even if you have a 5-person commission, who the commissioners can talk to, that they can't just go talk to this commissioner, that commissioner, and this commissioner about the same thing. It just doesn't work that way. Could you explain that, please?
Yeah, you know how much I love process. So with the Open Public Meetings Act, and when you have a 3-member board like the Port of Bellingham currently does, if any 2 commissioners have a conversation about port business, that needs to be happening in the open public meeting because the 2 of the 3 represents a quorum. If you have a 5-member commission, then 2 of those commissioners can have a conversation, but really only those 2. So you still can't have a serial meeting in which Commissioner Shepard and Commissioner Bell have a conversation, and then Commissioner Bell relays that information to Commissioner Briscoe. You can't do that, nor can you have what we call the hub and spoke, where you have one person having a conversation with each of the other commissioners. That's about port business. That's not allowed. As Commissioner Bell mentioned, there's executive session, but those are very limited to statutory provisions that you can speak about privately with a quorum. But even with the 5-member commission, you're never going to have more than what we call the phone a friend. It would essentially be a conversation between 2 commissioners, and that conversation should not be shared with other commissioners. It shouldn't be a continuing loop. If that's happening, it should happen in an open public meeting.
Thank you, Holly.
And that to me is
So
understood.
my take on, like I said, it's up to the people. They'll vote to whatever they want, and I'm fine with whatever the people of Whatcom County want to do. But here's my take on more than 3 commissioners. So personally, I don't think the Port, whether I'm on the commission or somebody else, I don't believe the Port of Bellingham at this time needs more than 3 commissioners. We're not that big a port. We get plenty of input from the public, maybe sometimes not enough. Maybe that's our fault sometimes, I don't know. But what I do know is that when we vote on something and we talk about something, it's in front of the people that it involves, and it's in front of the people whose lives are changed by what we do. I'm uncomfortable with our process in this entire country because no one seems to understand what a nonpartisan office is, let alone no one seems to understand in our county councils, our city councils, what Holly just stated. You can only talk to one other person. You can't run around and talk to everybody, and a lot of that goes on. So it is my belief, and once again I'll say it's up to the people, but it is my belief, and forever, it's my belief that you cannot be any more transparent than the Port of Bellingham's commission is right now. And if the people of Whatcom County want that transparency in their port to go away, then add 2 more commissioners, because that's what will happen over time. Your commission will become politicized, it will be nonpartisan, and the decisions will be made non-public, and that's my belief. So that's all I've got to say on it.
Yeah, I don't believe there's any perfect system out there in this political realm. I just think it's the better of the 2 systems. All right, any other business, Commissioner Shepard? Commissioner Briscoe, do you have any other business that you'd like to start?
No, at this time. Well, no, I do have one thing. So there was some discussions with a group of seafood folks, and I won't say any names because I don't think it'd be proper at this time. But it left me a feeling of urgency that we get warehouse number 9 down, along with the cleanup that's going on over there. That if we don't get that done, we're going to lose a business that could bring a lot of jobs to Bellingham, and another cold storage that we desperately need. So I asked our leading money finders sitting over there to see if we couldn't find something to get that building down with. And I spoke with Brian, and I just wanted both you guys to know that, and that we'd put warehouse 9 off to, I think, this summer of 26, and I believe that's a mistake. It's going to cost us some big business if we do that. I really believe that. So you guys could talk to staff, and Elliot can enlighten you on what's going on. But I think both you gentlemen need to get in the loop on that, and I think you'll see what I'm speaking to is that we need to get it done. So that's all I have.
Okay, we'll reach out to staff to get a discussion on that. All right, my last item for other business is just to report that there is going to be a process for the new executive search, and it's going to be a broad and extensive process. At least from my standpoint, I want to discuss it with fellow commissioners, but it's my intent to see that we reach out to as many stakeholders as we can and have a process that includes interviews with the commissioners to see what they desire in an executive director, with staff directors and staff to find out what their desire is for an executive director, but also stakeholders with the city, because we work collaboratively with the city, with the county, with others in this arena. That's probably going to take another consultant, unfortunately, but I do think it needs to be a wide net that we cast, and that we need to hone in on what skill sets, what qualifications, what credentials we're looking for moving forward in this arena. And I don't expect that process to take any less than 4 to 6 months if we do it properly. And I just wanted to go on record as saying that that's kind of what I'm looking for in the process, and hear back from my other commissioners.
Yeah, that's
Well, I agree with you, Commissioner Bell. I think that's the proper thing to do. I think the public needs to be involved to some degree. Of course, the final decision is going to come down to the three of us, but we certainly need all the input we can get, and everything needs to be transparent and above board, and I agree with you.
Yeah, thanks for that. If I can just add a little bit to the recruitment process. I know that probably you all are getting questions, as well as staff. So first of all, thank you for trusting me in the interim. Happy to help us through this transition, but also recognizing that it's an entire team of really capable directors and a really supportive team. So I wasn't even nervous today because they're all here. But the recruitment process looks like in the next upcoming weeks getting a recruiter on board and going through that process. And so we'll continue to keep everybody updated, and when we get them on board, let you know what kind of stakeholder outreach we're looking for and get your input.
Let us know what you're looking for in a recruiter.
Yep.
And who you're looking at. I would like to see that before we make a decision.
Great feedback, and our director of HR will be running that process, so she'll be in touch.
very good.
Last one is just, if you didn't see the Cascadia article on the Skagit success with their bread lab, we're modeling the property in the county on this model. And it was a great article on what a tremendous success the right research can be for a community and what it can bring to the table. And so it just, I encourage everybody to go take a look at that and see exactly why we're looking at buying property in the county to do research on our agricultural crops. So, that being said, anything else, commissioners? Bobby, I'm headed north. I'll see you in Alaska.
Yeah, I'm in the middle of BC right now in the water, making 10 knots. So thanks to Elon Musk, I could join in. Everyone have a good evening.
I'll just wave as I go by. Adjourned.